The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
India has fired missiles into Pakistan in a deadly escalation between the nuclear-armed neighbors.
We're also getting in this new video of chaotic scenes in a Pakistan hospital. Tensions between the two nuclear-armed force powers soared after a deadly militant attack on tourists on Indian-administered Kashmir last month. There has been a long-running dispute over Kashmir between India and Pakistan.
Because a war between the two of them would be the first time two nuclear-armed nations have engaged in direct conflict. It does not take long for this to escalate.
I think India will now face Pakistan's very fierce response because we are never the aggressors.
No, it's a shame. We just heard about it just as we were walking in the doors of the Oval. Just heard about it. I guess people knew something was going to happen based on a little bit of the past. They've been fighting for a long time. You know, they've been fighting for many, many decades and centuries, actually, if you really think about it. No, I just hope it ends very quickly.
What a time we are living in. I woke up this morning to headlines about the possibility of nuclear war between two, or at least war between two nuclear powers. World events are moving very quickly. Welcome to the Trumpet Daily Show. This is Richard Palmer subbing in for Mr. Stephen Flurry today, coming to you live from our Warwickshire studio here in the UK. I noticed on the Rumble chat, a couple of people enjoyed the new music. And so it's a bit of a blast from the past. I think we used to use that a few years ago. I enjoyed Sam Livingston's segment a few days ago covering the history of the Trumpet Daily, brought back lots of great memories. But we don't have some of the latest files. We need to make sure we get that updated at some time that's not 5 minutes before the show goes live over here. But I'm glad you enjoyed that. It also looks like we've got at least one listener from the UK in the chat, which is fantastic. But a pretty sobering news story to start the day today, with India and Pakistan being close to war. I guess those of you in the US, that probably all blew up while you were still awake. For me, it was kind of like, you know, waking up, checking the news, and oh wow, I've got these red alert emails and people talking about, are we going to have nuclear war? Is this nuclear war? And it is pretty serious. Pakistan's defense minister has said that India's attacks will not go unanswered. Do not underestimate Pakistan's response. It will be more significant than their actions. So, I mean, kind of the story so far, because I think this has been simmering for a few days before it really blew up this morning. You had on April 22nd a terrorist attack in Kashmir in India that hit mainly Hindus. This is India and Pakistan have clashed over Kashmir for decades. And in this Indian part of it, you had a terrorist attack. And Pakistan has links to a lot of those terrorist groups, and they fund and they support a lot of these terrorist groups. They deliberately give them safe harbor. I mean, I think everyone's familiar with Osama bin Laden, found in Pakistan. Not really surprising. And so they have a much smaller military conventionally than India, and they see terrorist groups as a way to level the playing field. And I'm not necessarily saying that they were deliberately behind or organized that attack that came on April 22nd, but certainly they harbored and supported the groups that did carry out the attack. At the very, very least, carrying out turning a blind eye. So India responded, naturally, to Pakistan sheltering terrorists. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe they didn't sign off on this particular attack, but you harbor terrorists, you're going to get held responsible for what they do. And so India struck, they said they hit 9 suspected terrorist facilities and killed 26 civilians in this attack. I mean, not deliberately, obviously. And now there's been a lot of heavy firing across the line of control, this kind of almost armistice line through Kashmir. Both sides claim all of Kashmir, but the line of control reflects the current state of play. But both of these powers have nuclear weapons, so the world is nervously looking on. Is this the start of nuclear World War III? Well, if that was all there is, there's another part of this, I think, that is making people very nervous. We've had terrorist attacks and then Indian responses before. One of the things that is different this time is that Pakistan claims that India hit a dam. Should I try and say this? I'll go for it. The Neelam Jehum Hydro Power Project, a dam as part of this power project, and water security is a major deal. The River Indus flows through Kashmir, this disputed region. Pakistan gets a lot of its water from there. India and Pakistan have a treaty governing how they use this. And it's such a serious treaty that even when the two sides have been fighting each other in the past, they've stuck with this treaty. But if India starts going after Pakistan's water supply, and Pakistan has warned that, well, if India, if you break this treaty, that they'll treat that very seriously. They said that any attempt to stop or divert the flow of water that they see as theirs according to this treaty will be considered an act of war and met with, quote, the full force across the complete spectrum of national power. So they said we could even respond with nuclear weapons if you go out after our water supply. So again, a pretty serious situation. So what is there to take away from all this? Is it nuclear World War III? I should mention that water treaty, India did suspend that, and that's part of all the background to these tensions. Well, there are some important things to take away. And as I said, India, Pakistan, they've been saber-rattling over this for a long, long time. They've clashed over Kashmir. They both want control of the Indus. They both want access to Central Asia. They've a lot of prestige regions for wanting this area. And they clashed over this during the time of Herbert W. Armstrong, when he was sending his message out warning the world with the Plain Truth and the World Tomorrow program. And one of those clashes came in 1971, and he was right there at the United Nations, and he was talking to the UN Under-Secretary General. He was talking to other regional officials and governors and foreign ministers about the crisis. And he talked about this, the Kashmir crisis and the build-up to it in 1971. He said the issues involved, well, actually, he's summarizing what his discussion with the UN Under-Secretary General, who said the issues involved were very complex and complicated, and made more so because both countries insisted on misrepresenting the issues. This gives an indication, writes Mr. Armstrong, of why we have no peace in the world. As long as individuals and governments are selfishly motivated, each trying to get, to take, to have, without concern for the welfare or evils inflicted on others, there can be no peace. And he said there, my visit to the two important offices at the United Nations only magnified, in my mind, the causes of all the world's ills. People and nations seem unable to recognize the true values and continue to pursue the false. So Mr. Armstrong talked about how it all gets back to cause and effect. He said a nation or an individual desires to have what another possesses. He finds a way to take it. This causes friction, retaliation. He pays the price of friction or even war. He pays the price of losing peace. It's too big a peace. It's a bad bargain. It's not practical. If each had outgoing concern for the welfare of the other equal to self-concern, both could profit without costliness and waste and destruction and losses through war. The way of outgoing concern is the cause of peace. And what is outgoing concern? It is the definition of love. Until we turn off hate and turn on love, we're paying entirely too much for what little we have. That was Mr. Armstrong's analysis of the Pakistan-Kashmir situation. And you know, he's spot on in that analysis. I mean, you look at how many resources Pakistan and India are devoted into nuclear power. I mean, these are places where there's a lot of poverty, there's some wealthy people, absolutely, but there's a lot of people that don't have a great standard of living. And yet, think of all of the expertise and the money and the attention that's gone in to building these advanced, sophisticated nuclear weapons so that they can hold each other at nuclear gunpoint. What would the situation be if they didn't go down that route? If they hadn't gone down that route, and if they had instead invested in things to make people's lives better, if they'd have met in a spirit of give and cooperation about the situation in Kashmir and devoted their expertise to much more productive ends. So, and that's Mr. Armstrong bringing it back to cause and effect and the way to peace, and this world lacks the way to peace. But there is good news in this crisis. It is leading to the way to peace. And it does say a lot about how urgent the times we're living in when we wake up to headlines saying, is this nuclear war? Is that what just broke out last night? And it ties into the point that Mr. Stephen Flow was talking about on the Monday show about the anniversary of the entry into the last hour. We live in urgent, dramatic times. We need to count the moments, measure the moments. It's a powerful reminder of that. But Mr. Gerald Flurry has had a lot to say on the subject of nuclear war and nuclear danger. Well, because the Bible has a lot to say on this subject. I brought a few clips from a 2009 Key of David that he gave talking about nuclear proliferation. It's too many syllables to try and say on a live radio show. Nuclear proliferation and what the Bible has to say about it, the dangers for the world. Here's a clip from that.
These are terrifying times that we're living in. We can't just sit idly by and hope that it'll all go away. It isn't going to go away. It's going to intensify and get far worse just before Christ returns to this earth and stops it, or human beings would not survive. That's how bad it is, and you can see it building all around you. And even madmen are getting control of nuclear bombs. Surely we must believe that this is not going to end well. Surely we must be adults about this and look at what Christ prophesied 2,000 years ago. And it's all being fulfilled, and it's about to explode in our faces. See, we should have been listening to Christ and it wouldn't have happened. But we don't listen to Christ, and that's the problem. Most people do not listen.
Most do not listen, but there's a lot. God has had a lot to say on this subject. In that show, he went to Matthew 24, where the disciples came to him and said, "Well, what's the sign of your second coming?" That's what the disciples of Jesus Christ are concerned about. That's right in the Bible. That's the right question to be asking. What are the signs? And Jesus Christ started talking about signs directly connected to nuclear war, nuclear proliferation, nuclear weapons. Here's what Mr. Flurry had to say about that.
But notice what a huge part of this sign are about nuclear bombs. Notice this. Verse 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. There's never been a time like this ever before on this earth. Why is that? Does it have anything to do with nuclear bombs and the abomination that makes desolate with nuclear bombs even? Are we going to listen to Jesus Christ, or are we going to ignore Him? Why don't you hear religions talking about these prophecies for this very end time, which is a sign that Jesus Christ is going to return and stop it? Notice that in verse 22. Verse 22, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved alive, the Moffat says. No flesh be saved alive, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Now, Jesus Christ says that these days are going to be shortened. They're going to be shortened. Now, here is a news magazine, Newsmax magazine, and they even have as their cover story the Jesus question, will He ever return? Will He ever return? And the answer is, yes, He will.
So Christ prophesied of a time where no flesh would be saved alive. And how, unless God intervened, how could you do that without nuclear bombs, without nuclear weapons, or weapons of mass destruction? And that's a prophecy that doesn't come from a human mind. How could you, living in the Roman times where like the most destructive weapon is a catapult, imagine up a time where all human life would be wiped out if God didn't intervene? But Jesus Christ knew that we were coming to a time that would have weapons of mass destruction. And he promised that he would return and stop it. And that is the point that Mr. Flurry really focused on in that Key of David. Here's one more clip.
And then he talks about those nuclear bombs. Those nuclear bombs. Let me, again, a sign, you see, of Christ's coming. It relates to those nuclear bombs that I talked about in the beginning. It's a part of the sign that Jesus Christ is coming to this earth very soon. If he didn't, there would be no flesh saved alive. It really is about human survival. It really is about that.
It's about human survival, but a powerful and important sign. And we have an article up on our website at the moment that points out the dangerous times that we live in on this subject of this war. It points out the dangerous times we live in, how this ties into prophecies about war and rumors of war. And the Bible is also very specific about how the Great Tribulation that does this time that threatens all life on this earth, how that would start. And as that article points out, the Bible prophecy tells us it's not going to start with a war between India and Pakistan. That's not how the Great Tribulation starts. That's not how this time of trouble starts. And Jeremiah Jacques writes in this article, even though the currently escalating India-Pakistan tensions will not be the fire that sparked World War, we should still view the conflict soberly. It should bring to mind the Bible's prophecies of a nuclear world war and help us see that they are coming nearer to fulfillment. So, I think there's perhaps a false comfort. You could look at this and say, well, it's not going to lead to World War III. You can go back to sleep, stop worrying about India and Pakistan. But, that's a false comfort. This really does point us to the dangerous and soberest times that we live in. But there is a comfort in that, well, God is not just going to allow man to do his own thing. And it's not going to be something blows up in India and Pakistan, and then you get a nuclear war and things spiral out of control and everybody dies. Like, God does have a plan. And there is a lot of suffering coming if mankind doesn't wake up and repent. But it's all happening in accordance with his plan. In this passage, that quote from Jeremiah, it made me think of 1 Peter 4 and verse 7, which says, "The end of all things is at hand. Be you therefore sober and watch unto prayer." So these world events, they should sober us. They should help us realize the urgent times. And then while we respond by watching unto prayer, we watch world news, and then we let that motivate us and bring about more intense prayer. And this makes me think about something else I've been working on over the last couple of days. I also host Trumpet World, our bi-weekly show that focuses more on international news and gets translated into a number of different languages, and looks at tries to reach out to Europe and some of those. But certainly we have most of our listeners listening in English. And for this Wednesday show that should be up fairly soon on YouTube and Rumble, we've been putting together a special show on VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, the 80th anniversary of VE Day. And I did this about 5 years ago for a Trumpet Daily show. This one's much better. I got more into the research, found some more great sources, looking at God, the history of God in Europe and in VE Day and in what was happening in World War II. And there are some stunning quotes from news articles, from the Times, from the New York Times, and not from, say, okay, we've let an archbishop come in and write a guest column, but like from editorials, from the newspaper's own reporting. And they're talking about we need to be praying. I hope everybody's praying at least twice a day for this, and talking about the importance of days of prayer. And then even at the end of the war, they're talking about, we need to be thankful. And that thankfulness goes beyond just saying thank you. And we need to be changing our lives and bringing our lives into submission to the will of God. And it's a powerful witness against us, our own history there. But that's kind of an example of what's being talked about in 1 Peter 4 and verse 7. They were watching world news back then and watching what Britain and America were going through in World War II. And that sobered the nation. And they watched unto prayer. And it caused them to really reach out to God more fervently. And I didn't realize this until I was digging into it this time. It was Winston Churchill himself. The Archbishop of Canterbury talked about, maybe we should have an annual day of prayer to ask for God's intervention. And actually Churchill said, no, that's not enough. I want 2 days. Like twice a year, we need to have days of prayer. And then after events like the successful Allied invasion of North Africa, it was Winston Churchill that said, we need a day of thanksgiving. I want a day set aside to give thanks to God for what happened in North Africa. I think it's just really interesting history, because Winston Churchill, he talks about providence, a divine power. He's not really known for talking massively about religion. I think as Prime Minister, he didn't talk massively about these days of prayer. I think he felt like that was treading on the King's territory, because the King is also head of the Church of England. So it was always the King that would announce these days of prayer. But Winston Churchill was there in the background, very much kind of the moving force between having a lot of these days, scheduling a lot of these days. And I think that role, I certainly underappreciated his role in pointing the nation to God to a certain extent. And he said, actually, I'd rather we call them days of humiliation than days of prayer. Because he was saying, it's more than prayer. We need to humble ourselves before the Almighty. That's almost Abraham Lincoln-like, coming from Winston Churchill. But that's the response that we need to have now as we see things spiraling out of control in India and Pakistan. And we see the dangerous world that we live. We see that you could just go to bed and wake up the next morning and have these headlines of, is it nuclear war? Is this it? Well, that's the response. Be sober and watch unto prayer. Think about how we're spending our time, how we're living our lives, being focused on what's important. And that article that we have on the website from Jeremiah, it concludes by just pointing to a little booklet that Mr. Fleury has. Nuclear Armageddon is at the door. Just a very short, powerful little booklet. It doesn't take much to read this, 26 pages. And you can read that all online, of course, on the website, thetrumpet.com, or we're happy to send you this, your free print copy so that you can get this out, get your Bible out, study them side by side and prove it from the Bible. But here, Mr. Fleury shows how Jesus Christ himself prophesied this state of nuclear Armageddon, but also that Jesus Christ will not let us reach this stage, and that it's not going to end in all-out destruction. And Mr. Fleury writes in that book, the good news is God will shorten the time span and save us alive. But if he did not intervene, there wouldn't be anyone alive on this planet. He will let it go a long way so that people learn they can't rule themselves. Men don't know the way to peace. God knows, and if you keep his law of love, it will bring great joy and peace into your life. So, we can be sobered by this event. We can be focused on what's important. We can also be joyful and full of hope. We can know that God is not going to let mankind wipe himself out. And he ties it in the end there with that perspective from Mr. Armstrong that he was talking about after walking around the UN and talking to UN officials as India and Pakistan moved closer and closer to war back in the 70s. That man doesn't know the way to peace. Man doesn't know how to solve these disagreements. And so we waste vast amounts of resources and ultimately bring the world to the brink of nuclear annihilation. Like India and Pakistan building nuclear weapons, spending huge resources to bring the world closer to nuclear destruction, when they could be bettering their impoverished citizens. While all of this is part of God's plan to end that and point man to the way of peace. Well, we'll take a quick break. When we get back, we'll look at some important news stories going on right now in Europe. So we'll see you in a minute.
Are we living in the last days? Some dismiss the notion as fanatical, but world leaders and news analysts are issuing warnings that are becoming more and more dire. Could Bible prophecies about the last days actually be accurate? Our brochure can help guide you through the relevant news and history and help you compare these events to what the Bible says. Are we living in the last days? This brochure is available for free right now at thetrumpet.com.
One may blind his eyes to existing facts and trends and say the world cannot get any worse than it already is. Or, if we just ignore the conditions and don't worry, perhaps they'll go away. But these conditions and trends won't just go away, not unless they are caused to go away. The scriptures of the Holy Bible, the inspired revelation of the Supreme God, have foretold today's world conditions and trends, and give us the advance news of coming peace on earth, of universal prosperity, of happiness and joy, of veritable utopia. This is the good news of the world tomorrow, and it is absolutely sure. This coming world is vividly described in our booklet, The Wonderful World Tomorrow, what it will be like. Bible prophecy explains in detail how God will intervene to save mankind from destroying himself. Jesus Christ will return to earth, putting an end to the rule of man, and restore God's government on earth. To learn much more about this prophesied utopia, please visit thetrumpet.com.
The Trumpet Daily Show. Well, over the break, I was taking a quick look at the latest news from the Vatican, from the conclave there in Rome. And there's a lot of dramatic news happening all around the world. So I wanted to update you on a few important bits of news from Europe. So right now, of course, the cardinals are meeting in the Catholic Church. Yesterday, we had the really dramatic vote in the German parliament where this Chancellor Friedrich Merz was supposed to be elected. It was supposed to be a formality where just he sat there and was crowned, was coronated. Like, he had the support. Everyone had pledged to support him. The coalition agreements had been signed. And then when push came to shove, he didn't have enough support, and he had to hold this panicky second vote. And all of Europe had been looking for him to be the strong man. I think it's so interesting how Europe knew they desperately needed a German strongman. And for example, in April, the Telegraph, Friedrich Merz, the man Europe has been waiting for. I saw an article, a headline from the Wall Street Journal. I think it was the day of the vote, saying, well, finally, Europe, we're getting a strong leader. And now everyone's talking about how weak he is. The Telegraph, now they had an article today. Friedrich Merz was supposed to leave Europe. Now he's fallen flat on his face. Very memorably, they conclude, Germany's Mr. Tough has become Mr. Trousers round his ankles. I guess that's the point. The trousers around more than one ankle, so he falls flat on his face. Politico, Merz is weakened from day one. Europe will pay the price. And they talked to the head of the Berlin office of the European Council on Foreign Relations and said, the whole of Europe looked to Berlin today in the hope that Germany would reassert itself as the anchor of stability and a pro-European powerhouse. That hope has been dashed, with consequences way beyond our borders. I mean, well, I'll talk about that in just a second, but the fact that all of Europe is looking to Germany, that is really remarkable. that shows just how much Europe needs and revolves around Germany. This was in Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. The setback will hurt Merz for a long time to come. Why? He was meant to be the strong, the solid leader after a coalition of chaos of 3 political parties that never really got along, and he couldn't get his own coalition behind him. If he can't get the most basic vote passed, should this guy be chancellor or not? How is he going to do anything controversial? So, everyone is looking at him now as being weak already. Eurointelligence talked this morning about how his term in office might not last. He said there is a material risk this coalition won't last to the end. Next year, 2027, there will be 5 state elections each, a massive concentration of elections to happen in the first term of this government, with plenty of opportunities for voters to register their discontent. So might people just leave the coalition, decide they want to get rid of Friedrich Merz? But this is exactly what Mr. Fleury has been talking about for years. I mean, even just about a week ago, he had an article, Europe needs someone greater than a German chancellor. I mean, he talked about some of these articles that you're seeing, saying, finally, we have a strong man to rule Germany and all of Europe in Friedrich Merz, and this is what we've desperately needed. But, he said that, he said Europe has suffered a leadership vacuum. Growing threats in the world demand strong leadership, especially from Germany. Many people hope Merz will fill that vacuum. But then further down he said, however, based on Bible prophecy, the late Herbert W. Armstrong believed it would take an office greater than that of a German chancellor to provide the leadership Europe is yearning for. End-time prophecy speaks of one overarching strongman who rules over 10 kings, governing a European superstate. And I think more importantly, because you may well, and Mr. Fleury's talked about this a lot more, he's not the strongman we've been watching for. We've been expecting someone different, and that strongman may well come to power as German chancellor as he steps up to that European strongman role. But we were looking for someone stronger. And we've been saying all along, well, Friedrich Merz, he might play a role. He may still play an important role in that strongman coming to power. There are aspects of his leadership. He's a Catholic, and he's got a lot of Catholics in his cabinet, and he is doing a lot of dramatic things to boost Germany's military, so he may well play a role, but he is not the strongman that all of Europe has been waiting for. He's not the guy that is going to lead this massive turnaround. And day one of his coalition just trips up and falls flat on his face. And now Germany still faced with a weak coalition. A coalition that has a tiny majority and that couldn't even elect their own leader on the first try. And Mr. Fleury's talked about this for years. Here's a bit of a montage we put together of Mr. Fleury talking about the way that a coalition crisis or a weak coalition is going to pave the way for a strong German leader.
Now, he's not going to come in by, let's say, a democratic process. He's going to come in and use flatteries and sort of tweak the democratic process. It says here something like that, and perhaps take advantage of a weak coalition. But he's going to come in by flatteries. So God sees him, well, not the same way the people see him, but he actually gains that power, hijacks that European superpower by flatteries. He apparently puts together some kind of a small coalition, and that's how he moves into power. I mean, he is unusually adept at flattery. You have to be very intelligent to be able to deceive people in high places with flattery. And he does it magnificently. Well, he was never voted into the office, but he came in, got control of all that power through deceit and flatteries. Now remember, this is an end-time book, and this is an end-time prophecy. It's going to happen again in this end time. A man is going to come, and through deceit and flatteries is going to get control of the Holy Roman Empire and its 10 toes, or 10 kings, and not by voting. Even though that is their system today, it is not he's going to come in another way.
So he's not going to just straightforward win the election. And Mr. Flo is focusing on prophecies in Daniel 8 and Daniel chapter 11 that talk about this strong man and how he's going to come into power, and it will be through flatteries and deceit. And he's long pointed to coalition politics as an important avenue for how that could happen. And what an opportunity you now have in Germany, where all of Europe is desperate for a strong leader. And the German guy's just humiliated himself and his coalition is shaky. We don't know exactly how it will happen, but this really does pave the way for this fulfilled prophecy. And I thought Mr. Stephen Flo made a great point yesterday where he talked about, well, this also just increases the focus on what is happening as we speak right now in Rome, in the Vatican. I mean, I've got a live video going here of the chimney on top of the Catholic Church, and live updates. The latest I had, 5:22. The papal master of ceremonies closes the door, the chapel door, and off they go to start voting on who's going to be the next pope. These 133 cardinals, and once they have a pope, we'll see the smoke coming out of the chimney. They're expecting the first lot of smoke coming out at 6 o'clock or our UK time. So basically, right around the end of the show, we should know, do they have a pope or not? It seems unlikely that they would have a pope today. I think they're just doing one vote today, and they need a 2/3 majority to walk out there with a pope. So they're doing one today. They're doing 4 tomorrow. So that would be more likely. The last 2 times, I think they got them in on the second day. So, well, we'll see. I think we could end up... There's long, interesting conversations you can have speculating who it's going to be. Probably not the most fruitful way to spend our precious time, though, given that we may well know tomorrow or within just a few days. But with all of these dramatic events taking place in Europe, I think it's worth taking a step back and looking at what we're expecting to happen in Europe. And a fantastic way to understand that is our book, He Was Right. And we're looking up dating this right now. So I don't know, I feel a bit torn. Usually I'm like, yeah, go read this, go order this. And that is great. But I really hope that before too long we'll have an updated copy as well. I mean, mostly just showing how, hey, there's more news events as they've continued, have just continued to adhere to what God inspired Mr. Armstrong to say and write. And we've got more evidence now that he was right, as it said on this cover. But I think you take this book and you look at the first 2 chapters. First 2 chapters in this book. First chapter, is a world dictator about to appear? And then next chapter, the Holy in the Holy Roman Empire. I mean, if you want to understand the events of the news today, Friedrich Merz in Germany, what's happening in the Vatican, well, this is your book. He was right. The biggest stories going on in Europe are the first 2 chapters. Strong leader for Europe, rise of a German strongman, and the role of the Catholic Church. Chapters 1 and chapter 2. And what we're watching, it's exactly what God revealed to Herbert W. Armstrong. I mean, this article, or this first chapter, talks about how the plain truth for 52 years was talking about the rise of a European federation, the rise of a European Union, and Germany leading it. It says, before World War II, Mr. Armstrong predicted it. During the heat of the Battle of Britain, he continued to forecast it. And where Germany lay defeated, crushed to smouldering dust by the onslaught of the Allies, he continued to proclaim the future resurrection of Germany, never wavering from his prediction that it was destined to lead a European combine. Right up to his final sermon, delivered towards the close of 1985, Herbert Armstrong continued to powerfully prophesy of these events. And he talked about the importance of watching a German strongman. He had so much to say on that. Plain truth, November, December 1954. Germany inevitably will emerge as the leader of a united Europe. It will require some spiritual binding force to inspire this confidence, to remove these fears, fears of being dominated by Germany, And that spiritual binding force must arise from inside Europe. All Europe is actually ready, just waiting for the confidence-inspiring leader. That man is there somewhere. I mean, he was talking about the same article in the same sentence. Strong leader, Catholic Church. This is what Europe needs. And right now, all of Europe is waiting for strong leader, Catholic Church. And this is, again, going back to what chapter 1 of this, from this booklet says. That excerpt contains the essence of one of the most powerful prophecies in the Bible. Mr. Armstrong repeatedly stressed that the prophecy revolves around 3 key points. Germany as a leader of a united Europe. And I think, okay, Europe is going to get more united, but we see Germany as that leader already. The fact that Poland and France and Belgium, and it's like that all of these countries are saying, we need a German leader. Like, we don't have any leadership without a strong German leader. We are suffering because we don't have a strong German leader. Shows how much Germany already leads Europe. So, you could put a check mark there, I think. 2, a spiritual binding force. And 3, a confidence-inspiring leader. These are the big things that are missing, and that's what all of these headlines today revolve around. And there's so many quotes that I could go through. But Mr. Armstrong talked, there's a lot of different quotes about him talking about the way that Germany would lead and dominate this coming European Union. There's quite a few quotes in there even after 2011, 2012, 2013, the Euro crisis, talking about how Germany was dominating Europe, taking over Europe. You don't really see those headlines anymore, and I don't think it's because they were incorrect. I think it's because it's not news anymore. 2011, 2012, 2013, it was news. Hey, Germany's taking over Europe. Oh, this is from Simon Heffer in the Daily Mail, 2013. 2011, the economic colonization of Europe by stealth by the Germans we're witnessing, he said. He observed that before it would have taken an invading military force to topple the leadership of a European nation. Today it can be done through sheer economic pressure. Germany leads and dominates it through economic pressure. Nigel Farage, he's in the news a lot. We'll talk about him if we're probably not going to have time. But he said, we're now living in a German-dominated Europe, something that the European project was actually supposed to stop. Something that those of us went before actually paid a heavy price in, something that those that went before us actually paid a heavy price in blood to prevent. And I think we've just gotten used to that now. Now, okay, my country doesn't have leadership if there's no strong German leader. So Germany, please get your act together. I don't feel safe in a world without a strong leader. We need you. Simon Heffer, again, I think this was 2013. The Fourth Reich is here without a shot being fired, and the rest of Europe and the world had better get used to it. We have. Now, a big part of the reason is Germany hasn't had that decisive leadership. That's given it several years to bed down Germany's really decisive control of Europe. And because without a strong leader, it's not really taken it in any controversial direction. So we have gotten used to it. And so, Mr. Armstrong, 1953, it's probable none but a German can provide the dynamic, inspiring leadership required to organize such a political and military federation. That's what they need. That's the next step that they are looking for, and that's what they're still working to get. And we have another little booklet. A strong German leader is imminent that will take you through and show why Mr. Armstrong made those predictions. Why he was able to give those forecasts. What Bible scriptures stand behind that? Because you can prove all of that from the Bible. He wasn't just making this up. He would say very regularly, don't believe me, believe your Bible. And you can turn and prove for yourself and see for yourself why Mr. Armstrong made these forecasts. And then the next chapter, putting the holy in the Holy Roman Empire. I mean, talk about, again, being right up to date. This is how it begins. Many historians and analysts underestimate the role of the Roman Catholic Church in European history. Many also underestimate the extent of the Vatican's involvement in the affairs of Europe and European countries today. Herbert Armstrong never made this mistake. And as you see Europe, or these different cardinals, gather in Rome and hold their meeting, I should go and check my chimney cam. But as they all get together, don't underestimate the importance. The person that they elect Pope is going to have a big, decisive influence on the future, not just of the Catholic Church, but of Europe. And this article says, well, we've seen how Mr. Armstrong prophesied the emergence of this Holy Roman Empire and this United States of Europe, that he warned that it would be ruled by Germany. But then this article, or this chapter says, biblical prophecy points to the necessity of some additional power to glue the fractious nations of Europe together. After all, Daniel's prophecy likened the final resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire to a brittle mixture of iron and clay. It's in Daniel 2, verses 41 to 43. Matching Daniel 7 with Revelation 13 and 17, Mr. Armstrong understood that the glue would be religion. God revealed that to him. Under God's guidance, he linked these prophecies with history and came to clearly see that the deadly spiritual force guiding this European superstate would be the Vatican. The Vatican is the holy in the Holy Roman Empire. And they quote this from 1978 from Mr. Armstrong. Europeans want their own united military power. They know that a political union of Europe would produce a third major world power as strong as either the United States or the USSR, possibly stronger. But then he says, but they well know that there is one possibility of union in Europe, and that is through the Vatican. It's the only way that they can do it. Again, another article next year. In only one way can this resurrected Holy Roman Empire be brought to fruition, by the good offices of the Vatican, uniting church and state once again, with the Vatican astride and ruling. And there's a good-sized section in there that talks about the role the Catholic Church played in breaking Eastern Europe away from behind the Iron Curtain, uniting Europe. And this is a tremendously specific forecast, where he was right. Mr. Armstrong was right. All the way back as early as 1951, he was writing about the role the Catholic Church would play in breaking Eastern Europe away from the Soviet Union. He said, for it is prophesied, some of these Balkan nations, and he's talking about Yugoslavia, but also Romania, Bulgaria, those are also in the Balkans, and they're now part of the European Union. Some of these Balkan nations are yet to throw off the Soviet yoke and realign themselves with the Pope. As long as the churches still function and the people still attend them, the only change being their submission to Moscow and separation from Rome, there is possibility of an internal political coup brought about by underground Catholic influence, which can restore their tie to Rome. Yes, that is highly significant, as we shall see. Here are two rival forces for world domination, headed by Stalin and Pius XII. But I say to you, watch. Do not underrate or sell short Catholic power, strategy, and resourcefulness. Do not suppose the Vatican is going to sit meekly down and turn the other cheek while Stalin shears its power and blocks its progress over more than half the world's population. And they didn't. They were patient. It didn't necessarily happen as quickly as Mr. Armstrong thought it would, but look, at that prophecy was fulfilled. The Vatican played a huge role in the solidarity movement, in breaking Eastern Europe away from the Soviet Union, in breaking up Yugoslavia and pulling Catholic Croatia out of Yugoslavia and establishing it as the richest, most prosperous part of the Western Balkans. The leader of that area. 1972. I think this is the plain truth. One of the biggest roles desired by the Vatican is that of mediator between East and West. So the Vatican, you can be sure, will continue to do its part in courting the Eastern European countries. Its Ostpolitik has been to bring them back into the fold for a long time, and that is certainly the path it must continue to travel. Or 1980, when Pope John Paul II appeared on the scene, Mr. Armstrong said the character, personality, and actions of the Polish Pope John Paul II indicate more than possibly he may be the Pope to offer his good services to unite the nations of Europe once again. European nations want seriously to be united. Of themselves, they are unable. John Paul II could make it possible. And John Paul II played a major role in bringing Eastern Europe away from communism, and now they're united as part of the European Union. He was right. The Catholic Church played that key role in bringing down the Soviet Union. So don't underestimate the power of the next Pope. He's going to be a very important figure. He's going to lead to shifts even more significant. So keep watching that conclave. Keep watching the Pope that we get from that. Keep watching Europe's pursuit of a strong German leader that we talk about in our article. A strong German leader is imminent. And these are all important, sobering prophecies that you can expect to shortly be fulfilled. Well, I did bring a few more quick news stories. I usually cover these at the beginning, but then I spend so long talking about them that I run out of time to get to the important ones. So instead, this time I saved them for the end. I wanted to talk a little bit about British politics. It's been a massively dramatic week in British politics. We had local elections. The voting was on Thursday. We got the counting on Friday, going on into Friday evening. And it was kind of stunning. You have Reform, this very new still party led by Nigel Farage. And for years, Nigel Farage has led parties, whether it's UKIP or Brexit. Like, they do well at EU elections, and beyond that, they're kind of irrelevant. Don't really make it into parliament, don't really win many seats, never come anywhere. You know, they struggle to come. It would be a big deal if they came in third place. Normally, it's kind of like fourth, fifth, and for years, they've gone around not really doing much. And then on Thursday, they absolutely dominated. There was one parliamentary seat up for grabs in a by-election. The previous MP had been forced to quit in disgrace. They won that. It was used to be a kind of a safe Labour seat. They won it by 6 votes, an incredibly narrow margin of victory, but they won it. I was reading articles. It was kind of funny because the things were changing so quickly, and it was taking journalists a while to catch up. There was an article. It was saying, well, I was talking to some pollsters yesterday, and they were talking about how big of a deal it would be if Nigel Farage won control of one of the, I think it was about 23 county councils up for grabs. If they won one out of the 23, that would be big. That would be big news. And then the guy says, but they won 2. This is huge. They're having a real impact. And I was reading that thinking, yeah, it took you a couple of hours to write this. Now they've won 10. 10 out of the 23. That's how much they ended up winning. The Conservatives and Labour won 0. If they've got this kind of result in a national election, they would just sweep the country. I think George has got a little graphic ready, where if this was from our Trumpet morning brief, if they performed like this or anywhere close to this in a national election, they're just turning all of Britain the light blue of Reform. I mean, this is a massive shift in European politics. Is it Nigel Farage? Much closer to Donald Trump than just about any other European politician. Now, I don't know all the details of where this are leading, especially as there's no need to hold a national election until 2029. That's quite a long ways away. But still, I think it opens the possibility that we'll see some resurgence for Britain, for a message to go out. I mean, certainly I hope so, but maybe I should put my hope less in today's politics. I mean, ultimately, even a resurgence in the United States, as nice as it is to see, really, that's all about just having an opportunity for God's warning message to go out, another opportunity to repent, and really it's all about leading to the return of Jesus Christ. That's where the real hope is, not in a resurgence in this nation or that nation. It's all about the return of Jesus Christ, but still, quite a dramatic event, and I think one worth watching. Maybe another couple I'll try and touch on just very quickly, but we've got some more peace deals all around the world. So Donald Trump today announced peace with the Houthis, that they've said they're not going to target American ships, and so he's going to stop targeting them. And in some ways, okay, good. He used strength. He confronted the Houthis more strongly than Joe Biden and the Obama regime did, and caused them to back down. But they're still attacking. Like, the Houthis are bombing Israel's airport. And America looks like they're kind of leaving Israel high and dry. And it was another Steve Witkoff deal, abandoning Israel. A brotherhood that, these two can do so much working together, but it looks like that's a sign that there's some more division. And that's on the front cover of the latest Trumpet print, the deadly flaw in Donald Trump's Middle East peace deals. And that's still an indication that there's something wrong there. And you can go and read that to see more about what is wrong. But that is about all that we have time for. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us, letters or td@thetrumpet.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and Mr. Stephen Flurry should be back this same time tomorrow.